It's a shame it goes off shot there, but okay, so there you go. That's the... But they don't go any further. So you are able to concentrate energy at the core. And this is what is going on in this structure. And as was shown in, I think it was the 2017 paper published in a major peer-reviewed journal, that when you get a fractal electromagnetic structure that is self-similar, and it's the only time I've seen it termed fractal, where the small section, the wheel within a wheel within a wheel, this level, is equivalent to the whole, you can get their toroidal moments cancelling, so you do not need an electric field dipole oscillation to cancel the electromagnetic waves out to give you your non-radiating boundary. But we know that it has this feed into the bottom of the overall structure. Okay, so that is kind of where I wanted to start today's thinking, and at the moment I have myself talking to myself, so I'm just going to find out why that is. How is everyone? Let me just find out what's going on there. Okay, I'm not there. I'm there. That's what's happening. Okay, let's kill that. Okay. Alrighty. So the video that I'm referring to actually is apparently it was published in 2014 and it's been resurrected by Ashton Forbes, and I'm just going to find it now. And this is the apparent video, and it is available on the Wayback Machine. Okay, and why it's interesting to me, and I get rid of my mugshot, is what you see. So if you haven't seen it, I'll just play it through. So apparently this is like a stereoscopic image. Apparently the mouse that you just saw appearing on the screen is a 60 or 30 frames per second mouse in a Citrix session. And here we have this orb coming in. Now, another one joins it and another one joins it. And at the museum in Brno, you can actually see fantastic stereoscopic display where you can see all these beautiful images from Switzerland from the late 1800s in false color. And watch this, watch this. The guy managing the mouse is dragging across, sort of pan zooming on a very large image, and poof. Okay, so a couple of points about this. This is an overhead view. Apparently, it's an IR image at night. I will say categorically that what I said to Ross Coulthart in my interview with him some long while ago, which you can see on remoteview.icu, that these structures are almost, I would say, exactly equivalent to what I witnessed when I was 7 years old, as best as I can remember, in 1979, in Worthing in the UK. And my father asked me to come downstairs with my brothers and sister and asked us to look out west and up into the sky. And we saw these four objects appear and then disappeared. Only recently, when I've been talking about this, did I realize that due west of the house, which is 32 Offington Gardens, Worthing, West Sussex, United Kingdom, You can go and look it up on Google Maps. Due west of that is what was called Shoreham Airport. I think it's got a different name now, but you'll still find it if you look for Shoreham Airport. And it was the oldest purpose-built airport in the world. There was an airstrip made for the Wright brothers to land, I think, the year before. But this was a purpose-built airport. So if you're in the southeast of England, I recommend you go and see that. And it was literally due east in exactly the line that we witnessed this phenomena. And the phenomena were these balls. Okay? And from my point of view, that was 1979. This is not new. And I would suggest that they were created from the ground at the airport and caused to form in the sky and be controlled from the ground. My conclusion is that they were some form of test of a weapon or a defensive measure, and it would make a lot of sense coming from that location. My father is not an alien. My father, as I've said before, was a very senior Mason. He said at one point he was the most senior Mason in the UK. That's a Freemason. And I know he had contacts in the UK Navy because he was revered for his short stint. He was on HMS Indomitable on the way to the Korean War when there was a fire in the magazine. And I've spoken about this on my blog. And he witnessed men being burnt. And but he was revered because of his physicality in the UK Navy. And in fact, actually, I was playing rugby once and for the university, and I went to Bath and we played a game there. And for whatever reason, I was talking or singing to some girls with another person that was at the university, and the rest of the rugby team was so drunk they just left without me, and I was stuck there, and my card wouldn't work, and then he got eaten by the bank ATM, and I just phoned up my dad, and you know, he had a Navy friend there, and he hosted me for the night and paid for my ticket back to the university in Brunel University in West London, where I was studying a special type of engineering course. And so he had UK Navy contacts and was a very senior Mason. So that's what I know. But what I can tell you is these are essentially equivalent to the objects that I was shown in 1979. Okay? So that being said, what we see is a formation of 3 objects around this. If Ashton is in the chat, maybe he can go to remoteview.icu and send the video, or I'll dig it out from the Jeremy Rees interview, where there are another view. Now, when I saw this after Matthew sent it to me, I thought, well, okay, this is interesting. There is a formation there, which is exactly what you would probably want to create if you wanted to do something with the fractal toroidal moment. And so when the punchline came, I was not surprised. Now, this is 2014. I actually shut my animation and special effects business in India in 2014. I'm telling you categorically that every video that I've seen relating to this, I could have faked long before 2014. 100% on my own. 100%. Now, I had not a clue about how this technology worked in 2014. Okay? I'd essentially stopped working for my own company in 2012. So, you know, and because I was starting to volunteer for the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. And so I didn't do it. It wasn't me. That being said, if I did want to do it, like I say, I had no idea how a technology would work that would end up with what you are seeing in the last frames of this video. I would have no motivational reason to create a video that showed what is showed here. None at all. So the fact that this is historically, it would appear, on the Wayback Machine, and that's where this is being played from right now, in 2014, it means that someone got really, really, really lucky with what they were doing. Really, really lucky. Okay? And I believe that what was already shared at ICCF 25 can explain potentially both options for what may have happened in this video. The first option, obviously, is that the plane is somehow made to disappear, and that is annihilation. The other one would be that it is put into a wormhole, and it reappeared instantaneously at the other end of the wormhole. So one view is that you could take that apparently this plane was in some distress. Ashton talks, and I don't know, but I'm taking what he says as being the possibility that people can accept, that there was some sort of lithium battery fire on this plane and that it was doomed. It couldn't land in sea. It was breaking apart anyway. And so you might have a situation where the people that had access to this technology might have thought, well, they're all going to die anyway. And with respect to the families that did suffer a loss as a result of whatever happened here, I'm sorry, but maybe they thought we can test this technology on this particular aircraft and there will be no net loss. Or they might have thought, well, we potentially have a chance to save them and we can potentially use this teleportation technology. And they did, and it didn't work. And then there's a subtext to that they might have done it and it did work, and these all people had to go into, witness protection program or whatever they call it, because they're supposed to have had this plane disappear, and you can't really announce that you've got teleportation technology because who's going to take a plane from then? They're going to want to be teleported, right? No one wants to go to an airport and go through security and do like 10, 15, 20 hours on a plane if you can just be teleported, right? So, you want to keep that for military reasons and stealth reasons and so forth. Okay? The argument that you can do volumetric lighting with these clouds, it's something that I was doing on a regular basis in my business long before this. Long before this, right? So that for me is not an important argument in terms of the veracity. For me, the thing here is that this has provenance without, certainly in my view, anyone in the public understanding that this could be possible and the way that it is possible. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to try and find the other video, which I think Ashton's got on his Twitter. So let me see if I can find it there. Okay, I think it's here. So I think we can probably get it from here. Okay. Right, yes, I think we can do it from here. Okay. So what we've got is one of the stereoscopic images over on the right. And then this second image on the left, I think, I'm not totally certain what this is meant to be, but it looks like it's a thermal imaging colorized version, but taken from maybe a AWACS or something that was tracking the plane in its distress. Okay, so And for those people, you know, I hummed and ahed for the best part of 10 days on whether I was going to discuss this. And really, when I saw the Jeremy Reese interview and realized that this was a video from 2014, and with the context that I've just given you and what you see, and knowing that this can cause things to disappear, and when they tend to do that disappearance, they go in a flash, I was compelled to do this. So for those that like to attack the project when they feel that we're going off subject, I'm sorry for you, but I believe that this is fully on subject, and I think that at some point we've got to address ways in which this technology has been used, because we need to wake up to its possibility. If it turns out to be fake, well, it's a pretty well-informed fake, is all I can say. And I didn't go back in time and force them to make this video with what we know now. Okay, so we play the second video here. All right. So someone in the chat is saying that this is from a drone. So thank you, Nick Knock, for that detail. Okay. So as we play this, now I just want to say that these videos have been through a number of encoding cycles. I learnt through my AV and animation business every type of artifact you can possibly get. And it kind of pleases me to see the blocks of the encoding here, because it means that someone hasn't tried to use one of these modern AI filters to remove the block encoding and add artifact and fake imagery on top of the original footage. I expect someone to try and do that later down the line, and so it's better, in my view, to review something that's closer with only a few generations of artifacting in my discussions here. Okay, so as I play this forward, you can see the banking of the plane here is consistent with potentially something that's following it from sort of almost on the same kind of plane as it, when I say the vertical plane. And you can see the first ball coming in here. And then the second ball. And I'm just going to play this through, and then we're going to look at it a little bit closer. It's a shame it goes off shot there, but okay, so there you go. That's the disappearance, as it were. So I'm going to go through here. There's a couple of points that Ashton seems to talk about as being very important. He seems to think that there is a forward-pointing coolness. So what you're looking at here in the thermal imaging, the yellow area here is probably the hottest part, which is the central line of the body of the plane. You've got some warmer vapor coming out as the contrails, and maybe if this was actually in some sort of fire, then also this might be some smoke from that fire. And then you have these structures which are emitting light. Interestingly, you can see on this one there's a bit of red coming out there. And this would kind of imply that these are warmer than the environment. And for that to happen, one might expect that if they didn't have their own energy source, they must be extracting the energy from the environment. I really, when I'm playing through this video, I see that the black is mostly behind, but there does seem to be a little bit in front. And it's not conclusive to me because of the JPEG artifacting. Maybe there is a better version of this video. I don't know. However, or rather the interframe artifacting or something. However, what I will say is that we know from Extreme Interactions, that is a video that I presented in Azizi a few years ago with the work of Henk Uren and David Boutlier on the Vega experiments, that the exotic vacuum objects will fire a thing, or it has some sort of projected field out in front of it that will cause other exotic vacuum objects to orbit around them. So there is something that goes out in front. I believe that this is the toroidal moment, the beam that goes out far faster in front of it, and that, along with the, let's say, the Ukon of Asara, this part of the fractal toroidal structure, this part here, this changes epsilon 0 of the physical vacuum, and it has like a beam that comes out in front of it, and that enables all of the funky magic that these things can do. And because of the non-radiating boundary, when these things get close to it, they don't do anything until they get within the radiating boundary, and then they orbit around them. And that's true of the toroidal moment that fans out from the, or projects out from the front of the device. Of course, we know things come in from the rear as well. And we've seen that in many different systems, from hydrodynamic to magnetohydrodynamic, and this would be a fluid, superfluid in the ether that is doing the main funky business that would lead, in my view, to this potentiality. Okay. So what I see actually in these images, and maybe it's artifacting, I don't know, but is often we are seeing, and maybe, I don't know if I can zoom in, I can't zoom in, we are seeing the non-radiating boundary, and you can go and look at this video itself, but inside that there is a much smaller thing, and it does tend to be offset. It does tend to be offset, and that would be consistent with the toroidal structure in the center and the kind of mushroom that it creates with the material as it goes around orbiting the fractal toroidal structure in the center of the exotic vacuum object. So again, you can see there's a light bit here, and when you go and look at this video yourself, it's probably not clear with the additional YouTube encoding going on in this live stream. There is a boundary at a distance, and this is all consistent with what I've showed you with the structures. Again, here we can see this. It's got this arched bit here at the front, but the actual non-radiating boundary is much larger. Here, non-radiating boundary, much smaller focal point in the center. Here, mushroom-type shape, non-radiating boundary offset. Here, mushroom shape, non-radiating boundary offset. Okay, now I'm going to see if I can go back to that because it's very clear on this. Look, here we go. We have our non-radiating boundary, okay? And we have this little tuft of thing at the top, right? Now, I'm going to go back to the monopole in this presentation. And we have shown that our work is actually more accurate than this. So if you can imagine this here, this is where the torus is kind of focusing its moment to lead to the monopole location, the topological monopole here. This is a dome that you get, and we showed that our observations are more accurate even, or very closely match the theoretical modeling of a topological monopole. Okay, so let's go back to this if I can. Where is it? Where's it gone? Is it going to go? There we go. So here, this is this top. So that the monopole is actually at the base of this bit here. Okay, and this is the glowy bit that you see as material is pushed through, but then it hits the top of the non-radiating boundary and is fed back into the coherent structure. Okay. Here, this is very, very clear. This is almost exactly looking like the Aalto University peer-reviewed published structure. So the monopole would be at this point. The toroidal moment would be going out this way, and you can see the dark area in front. So it's cohering energy from here. Okay, so this is traveling in this direction, and it's cohering energy from in front of it, and that comes into what I call the Borg. Yeah, it becomes part of the collective. And here is the plume that you get. This is the Uconophosaura. Maybe we can get, yeah, so here, there. This is very, very clear. Okay, so the monopole's location is here. This is the non-radiating boundary. Okay, this is the phase inversion. The dark area above will be where it's cohering energy. And you will have the disruption beam coming in to the monopole at the bottom here. Okay. Again, here. So when I saw this video, it was like, well, to fake this one back in 2014 showed incredible understanding of technology that no one had an understanding outside of the black world, even if there was anyone that had an understanding in the black world. To fake this one and have the thermal imaging correctly representing and the non-radiating boundary and everything is beyond imagining. And unless there's some sort of Mandela effect where these things are being projected back into time and to fulfill a narrative to maybe discredit the work of the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, I don't know. And it seems a little bit sus. So here, if that doesn't tell you you've got your Uconophosaura there, I don't know what will, right? It looks like this, okay? That is the bit that changes epsilon 0, okay? The permittivity of the vacuum, okay? And it's pulling it in here. It's correctly facing forward as it is at the moment. And so what you would want to do is you would want to bring these in, get them into their alignment, get them tracking the device accurately, get them equidistant, and then what you would do is you would rotate their orientation so their toroidal moments link up and make a super tor that would then have its azimuth going through the center of the craft that you are wanting to either disappear or teleport. Okay, and that is exactly, in my view, what goes on. Okay, so this is the non-radiating boundary. The actual tor, the actual monopole causing structure is much smaller, as we know. It's in this central section here. Okay, all right. And then you'll also want to pull them in together. And I will explain with scientific published papers that are I've discussed in great detail, but which is in my ICCF 25 presentation, where if you reduce the overall diameter of the tor -1, the field strength both in the tor -1 and through the azimuth goes up exponentially, and this is already experimentally proven. Okay, so let's see if we can see it. This for me is just open and shut, really. When I saw this, I thought, okay, now I have to talk about it. And here we go. We've got, so that's rotated around its orientation, and this one is now got its core there. But you can see very, very clearly the monopole is here. Okay, this is the Uconophosaura. This is the Thor's hammer, the most powerful thing in the universe. It's changing epsilon and mu. Sorry, epsilon 0, the permittivity of the vacuum. Here again, absolutely crystal clear in my view. Absolutely crystal clear in my view. Perfect, absolutely perfect. As I'm stepping through this, it's just a wonder to see this technology at work. There we go. And this is exactly what's orbiting around here. Look at that. I mean, it's just, how beautiful is that? Totally, totally beautiful. Sorry to the families, again, that suffered their losses. Look at that. Look at that. Is that not our Thor's hammer? Right. Oh, dear. That's the non-radiating boundary. The actual structure that's creating the monopole is much smaller in here. We know almost exactly how small it is from our work, because it seems to be the same always. And there we go. So you can do this at your leisure. They're all doing the same thing. Oh, that's particularly lovely here. Look at that. Really, it's got the perfect monopole structure there. Look at this. Just glorious. glorious. We have, if we generally get accepted that this is technologically possible, we have the most incredible future ahead of us. Just the most incredible future. Look at that. Look at that. Okay. So are we coming up to the money shot? You can see the heat signature from the engines here very clearly. You can even see sort of like sections of the fuselage where you've got the windows maybe radiating a bit of energy from the inside of the plane. I don't know whether maybe this is the other engine or it's a fire. I don't know. But anyway. Thing of great beauty. Now look, at this point, they seem to be tumbling the monopoles. So it's not going forward. It's starting to rotate itself. And, okay, do they align? Do they start to get into alignment? Because what you want is the monopoles to have their own azimuth to produce a ring to create another tour above, and then you pull these in, and that creates the unification of the forces at phase singularity of the -1 tours. Look, okay, so they're pulling in at that point, right? That's exactly what you want, right before. So they're rotating and pulling in, okay? That is exactly what you would need to do, and boom, it disappears. And it goes in a flash. And we have seen copper, if you remember in our Henk Uren's 15mm ball lightning structure, which caused copper to literally disappear. And I have it here in the drawer here for your viewing pleasure. Right? Check out this. This was sat on a piece of iron plate, and it was a copper, very highly thermally conductive pipe, and it had another iron plate above. And in the video of this, and in fact it was up this way, in the video of this, we see a hemisphere of coherent matter in the form of ball lightning appear, and it takes out a spherical hemisection out of that in multiple axes. It disappears when this happens. Does it go somewhere else? Don't know. Does it disappear? And we're going to look at what we found on the outside edge of this, which tells us about what these things are in their smaller quanta. But this is disappearance, and I hope it didn't reappear in Henk Uren's arm or whatever. Maybe it appeared somewhere else in the reactor, but it is a fairly large lump of copper, and anyone that knows anything about the thermal and electrical conductivity of copper would be very surprised that you had such a razor-sharp edge on that piece of copper that was sitting on another piece of metal. How did that occur? Well, that's because it got to the point of coherence, and when it's at coherence, the thing disappears. And as you know, on one side of that structure, there is a torus structure. And that might have been one of the responsible monopole structures that did this. So it could be annihilation or teleportation. I'm going to discuss both aspects with experimental data. But for my point of view, when I stepped through this video, it was like, I have literally no choice. I have to discuss this. I have no choice. I have to discuss it. Okay? And I think the first point that I will go to, and you can download my presentation from ICCF 17 on remoteview.icu. The first slide I will draw on is actually John Archibald Wheeler's commentary on what geons are and their relationships to black holes and his last thinking. And this slide for me is probably extremely pertinent now in respect of what you have just seen. So I will go here and I will go, sorry, slideshow, play from current slide. Okay, so let me show you this. Okay, so what you are seeing here, I went back into the archives and found out that in 1976 there was a Japanese laser in a non-linear plasma paper. You might have heard Salvatore Pais talking about that if you saw the interview that was done between him and Ashton Forbes prior to me giving this presentation. But this is 1976, Japanese laser pulse into nonlinear plasma saw a greater than 1,000 Tesla field generated. Okay? This was replicated recently, funded by the US Department of Energy, the UK, the European Union, China, South Korea, Japan, and it was conducted on supercomputers and also done in the experimental way. So this is published in a major peer-reviewed journal, and it shows in 2021 that a laser in a nonlinear plasma produces over 1,000 Tesla's field. Very similar to the work done in 1976. And it produces trillions of volts per meter field. Okay? So those are the fields observable. The other thing is that if you are able to change epsilon zero, the permittivity of the vacuum, the dielectric constant, you are able to create changes in how easy it is to create fields. And I will go briefly over the permittivity transitions, the 2000 paper of Ken Shoulders. But what you can see over here on the right is taken from this extremely important paper. And what they noticed is the field, and in this case this is 20 microns across, the field here and through the azimuth is 1.36 thousand Teslas. Okay? And what they found was that as you reduce the diameter here, you get the field getting much larger as you reduce the diameter. So if you can imagine our 5 micron fractal toroidal structure has much smaller toroids that have much smaller toroids in them and much smaller toroids in them, the size of the fields within those smaller toroids will literally be unimaginable. And if we're already getting trillions of volts per meter in this structure, what are we getting when we're getting these very much smaller structures? Remember what I showed you at the beginning of this video with the so-called electron analogs going down into that vortex motion, increasing their angular velocity, trying to expel energy as they go in louder and louder sound, and self-organizing at the phase singularity. Now, the interesting thing from this magnetic vector map here that you see here, okay, is that the magnetic beam that comes through the central azimuth here, which is mapped at 1.36 thousand Tesla, stops abruptly in the central plane of the torus. That is telling you that that is the magnetic phase singularity. Okay? So if you have something that has a magnetic moment, I don't know, like oxygen or protons or atomic hydrogen or, I don't know, electrons, then you could imagine that they would come down here and end up in a phased singularity structure at the bottom here. Okay? And you can see the overall structure here, and you can see the flux coming in right into the center here. Okay? Right? So, this is the structure of the Geon, according to John Wheeler, who worked on the Manhattan Project. He was kind of like the inventor of the black hole and the wormhole. And this is his 1954 major peer-reviewed journal. And this is 2 electromagnetic waves going around in a standing wave, producing a structure that has electric fields strong in the regions indicated here and magnetic fields in between, and held together by a gravitational azimuth. Now, I'm going to let him do this full speech here because it's extremely important.
Radiation, a pencil of radiation, carries energy with it, and energy has mass, and therefore a pencil of radiation must exert some attraction on things beside it. What about getting a pencil of radiation curved into a circle so the light goes round and round? Then the attraction it exerts is concentrated as if at the center. So what is it that bends this circle, this pencil of radiation into the circle? It's the gravitational attraction of the pencil of radiation itself. That was the idea of the Jihan. Actually, if you think of different possibilities for the size of that Jihan, bigger or smaller, you find that if it's very big, the energy is low. To push the radiation together requires energy. And you climb a hill like the hill of a volcano until you've come to a maximum energy. And then if the pencil of radiation becomes any smaller in size, the energy starts to go down and the thing collapses. So a Jihan is really an unstable entity. It either blows up into a cloud of radiation traveling away in all directions, or it collapses into a totally collapsed object, something that we today would call a black hole. But that stability analysis I didn't have in mind when I first published this work. Only later did I see that that's the feature that's dominant. But nowadays, I'm attracted with the idea that this pencil of radiation going around in a circle does not have to be light. It could be gravitational waves. And you could have gravitational waves imploding to make a black hole.
That, my friends, that. So, if we go back to our video here. Right. What you've effectively got when he pulls out a bit. Now, as I've said before, what goes through the center of these structures is relic neutrinos, electrons, and ions. When you've got electrons and the relic neutrinos basically is, in my view, the gravitational medium through which it is allowed to propagate. And effectively, that is a gravitational beam, as well as you've got the magnetic beam going through there, as well as you've got electrons and ions. Is it any wonder that at the phase singularity, you get unification of the forces? Because all of these things are forced into something of the order of the distance of the Planck's distance. Okay? And so that forms a gravitational azimuth, which can come out here and get sucked into the one up here and get sucked into here. And as this pulls towards the center, okay, and they change their orientation to make the proper ring, notice what John Archibald Wheeler says. it gets bigger and bigger, the azimuth, the intensity of the gravitational flux, but also the intensity of the phase singularity within this subfractal. And you have coming through here, relic neutrino, or rather, one could argue from the in front of it. So the relic neutrinos are coming in here. Your other matter is being pulled in, and there ends up being a phase singularity here. And we know from this distance, and I'm pretty sure that when you propagate the velocity of these coming in to the point at which it blows up, that the torus that is made here, the bloom will be outside of it, because it will make a non-radiating boundary as the material collapses into the gravitational event. Okay? And he's saying that makes a black hole. He's literally saying a black hole. So you could argue that these have their own little black hole at the center of them, but you're moving them around. Okay? But when you move them in, you make a Tor plus one. So these are the Tors. And when they come together and orient themselves, they make a Tor plus one, where the gravitational azimuth comes through, and the magnetic comes this way, and your magnetic flux comes. We basically have unification of the forces, and at some point you get what you call a black hole. So that's exactly what John Archibald Wheeler was saying there in this slide. Okay, I'll just get him to repeat that last bit if I can.
Radiation,
Can I?
Radiation carries energy with it.
All right. Well, I can't get him to repeat that very easily. But anyway, the point is you can go and download this presentation. I have the videos embedded in it so that you can watch this at your viewing pleasure as many as times as you like. Okay? So here we have the confirmation of the, in a major peer-reviewed, funded by basically all of the world's major energy players, paper that replicates work from 1976 talking about putting a laser into a non-linear plasma. And it ends up with a phase singularity. Through this, which you see this 1.36 thousand Tesla, there is also a gravitational azimuth. So at the same point here, you have a gravitational beam coming through, and probably that is projected forward. So it might be the neutrino beam that is going. And I've speculated that this is why these things don't interact normally with electromagnetic fields, but they do interact with each other because they interact with the gravitational flux, or the relic neutrino beam that comes out. And there are Russians that talk about these things. They call them neutrino rockets. And I've discussed about those in previous presentations. Okay, so I'm going to go and find some other slides really to talk about here. So what do I mean, for those that don't know about phase singularity, what do I mean about the non-radiating boundary? Let's have a look at that. So we'll just quickly run through, and I'll pick out the relevant slides to explain this phenomena. And here we go. Thank you to Jeremy Rees of Alien Scientist for hosting this interview with Ashton. Because it gave me the impetus to, well, actually, I'd already decided I was going to do it because of what I saw in the monopoles there, but really, it was I just had no choice now. Okay, so it's interesting. I don't know why that's not showing.